Hello and welcome, my friends and viewers, to this week's episode of Legendlore, where I draw and talk about monsters, characters, gods, and other things from D&D 5th edition, all while giving a small but quickly digestible history about them. Together we'll go over their history within the game, how they're utilized in the modern edition, and how you guys can utilize them in your own games. This week we are once again returning to Curse of Strahd to cover the object of the titular Count's affections, and arguably what is supposed to be the main driving force of the module itself, that being the NPC Ireena Kolyana, otherwise known as the reincarnation of Tatyana Fedorovna. As usual, beware this will have massive spoilers for the Curse of Strahd module, and if you are currently playing in said module, I would highly recommend that you skip over this video. This is mainly for dungeon masters who are currently in the midst of running, or those who wish to know a little bit more about the lore of the game. With that said, let's get right into it. Within the context of Curse of Strahd itself, Ireena Kolyana is believed to be the most recent incarnation of the lost love of Count Strahd von Zarovich, that being the Lady Tatyana. The origins surrounding Tatyana are largely shrouded in mystery, with some believing her to be amongst the Barovian nobility, while others say that she was a mere peasant girl or servant that Strahd became enamored with during one of his travels. Whatever the case may be, Strahd was immediately smitten with Tatyana, working hard to woo and seduce her by both power, grace, and what some might call fear. Strahd was a powerful warlord taking after his father, and to deny such a powerful man would mean to put one's own life in peril. He ultimately failed to truly win her affections due to the presence of his younger brother Sergei, a bard and poet whose charm and devotion quickly led Tatyana and him to become romantically entangled. In his obsession, Strahd took to the Amber Temple in search of powerful magic to make himself eternally youthful, believing that that was the reason as to why Tatyana had refused his affections. From here, it leads to the fateful day where Strahd murders his brother on his wedding day, drinks his blood to become a vampire, and chases Tatyana up the towers of Ravenloft to convince her to marry him, all while still covered in Sergei's blood. Horrified by what Strahd had done and broken by the loss of Sergei, Tatyana threw herself from the highest tower into the gorge below, and so she would end up becoming one of the many linchpins for the curse that would afflict Barovia for centuries. Furthermore, Tatyana is also said to have been reincarnated multiple times over the course of the centuries that Strahd has been an immortal vampire, while the land of Barovia has been trapped within the shadowy mists as a demiplane of dread. I won't go too far in depth in these different incarnations, but her previous lifetimes include an asylum patient transformed into a werewolf, an artist adopted by the burgomaster of Berez before its flooding, a barbarian chieftain cut down by Rahadin, a rebel against Strahd who joined the Keepers of the Feather, and a priestess to Lathander who actually managed to die of old age, never actually encountering the Count during their lifetime. More details about all of these lives were collected here in this very excellent Reddit post, providing a bit more of a specific timeline should your players turn out to be lorehounds or just be genuinely interested in Tatyana's story. I've included it in the description below, and we'll also talk about them a little bit more in depth in the Running Ireena at the Table section of the video, showing how you guys can use these past lives to help guide your players and influence their pursuit of adventure hooks within the campaign. Now moving back to this timeline, Tatyana as Ireena is the adopted daughter of Kolyan Idirovich, the previous burgomaster of the village of Barovia who dies before the players ever arrive there, and the adopted sister of Ismar Kolyanovich, Kolyan's biological son. The two had found her when she was very young, wounded by a pack of wolves that had attacked her, her father, and her biological brother during a fishing trip by one of Barovia's many rivers. They had since taken her in and raised her as their own, and it is up to the DM as to whether or not Ireena was old enough to remember that she had another family. Biologically, she is also the sister of Izek Strasny, another survivor of the attack who lost his arm in the process, being discovered, adopted, and serving as the enforcer for the Baron of Valaki, Vargas Valakovich. In terms of appearance, Ireena appears as a young woman with dark skin, freckles, brown eyes, and the telltale red hair that all incarnations of Tatyana are believed to be born with. She does, however, try to hide it by dyeing it black or brown to match that of her family, as well as combat against the superstitions that surround her at every turn. In terms of outfits, she often just wears simple clothes not befitting of her noble status, though that's not really saying much given the land of Barovia's current state of governorship. Once the players pick her up, however, she can eventually be trained to wear armor and wield a sword, as shown in both her official art and stat block within the module. In terms of Ireena's relationships, while she does love her brother Ismark and her father Kolyan, they were always extremely overprotective of her due to her having the red hair and the people's superstitions of her being one of Tatyana's incarnations, which only grew with the looming presence of Strahd himself. In the base module, he has already bitten her several times, which means that he indeed has a wish and want to claim her, eventually resulting in her father Kolyan suffering a heart attack and dying from the stress, leaving the rulership of Barovia in Ismark's hands. When the PCs arrive to the village, once they have proven themselves to be trustworthy, Ismark will ask them to take her to Valaki in hopes of protecting her from Strahd, since it's believed that the Count is unable to set foot within the town. Speaking of Strahd, Ireena blames him for the death of her father, and thus has no desire to interact with him on any level, and she greatly fears being kidnapped or charmed by him in some way and brought to the castle of Ravenloft. Over the course of the module, if the PCs do not work to protect Ireena, she can eventually be swayed to Strahd's side by his magic, charms, or maybe even legitimate feelings towards her. But as it always ends with her previous incarnations, Ireena is doomed to die before, I believe, her 24th birthday, the age where Tatyana had killed herself to avoid being stuck in the vampire's clutches. Then lastly, there is Izek Strasny, Ireena's elder brother, who in the base module has become a ruthless and violent enforcer of the Baron's laws within Vallaki. He is often believed to have an obsession with a red-haired woman that appears in his dreams, often commissioning the local toy maker to create dolls in her likeness in the hopes that it can jog his memory as to who she is, or that perhaps he'll recognize her when he sees her. If the PCs follow Ismark's instruction to bring her to Vallaki, he will put two and two together and begin snooping to figure out why he keeps seeing Ireena in his dreams, and it is then up to the players as to how they want to deal with it. With all that out of the way, let's talk about how I recommend using Ireena at the table when running Curse of Strahd. I have come across many complaints from various DMs that the PCs are always either keen to ignore Ireena or resent her presence, mainly due to the perspective that they end up just becoming babysitters for her, and that she is a magnet for various encounters with Strahd himself, who is notably high level. If you have a party full of murder hobos, they're no doubt going to suffer, as Strahd is going to smack them down at lower levels. This is because in the base game, Ireena isn't exactly useful or interesting in terms of how she affects the PCs themselves. Sure, she is the object of the main villain's affections, but your PCs are much more inclined to kill Strahd for being an evil vampire lord than in the defense of some random girl that they just met. This obviously doesn't apply to PCs or players invested in the story and the lore and the drama, but I digress. The way that you solve this problem is twofold. One, Ireena's presence needs to be mechanically beneficial to the party, and two, Ireena's presence has to make the game actively more engaging from a story standpoint, beyond just Strahd's constant pursuit of her. When running D&D, the game needs to be about the players, not about an NPC or everything that's happening around them. They have to actively affect and change the world in order to feel like they actually have agency and would even bother playing. So in order to do this without having to cut Ireena out of the module entirely, I recommend having Ireena actively help the party in many of the side quests within the village of Barovia, such as the investigations of the priest Father Donovich or the plague that is currently afflicting the villagers. In terms of having her in combat, she does have a stop block within the original module, and I also have my own that I like to run, at which point the DM can run her, or she could even give them to the PCs to pilot. However, what I personally like to use is instead have her presence allow the PCs to gain benefits such as advantage on an attack roll, or avoiding an attack of opportunity. These are small but useful bonuses that allow the players to see the mechanical use in having Ireena around, without having to run and keep track of an entire stat block. Eventually, if you don't mind doing the work and are okay with her having a stat block, maybe she can ask the PCs to train her and become a better fighter so she can help them out more, and have this cause them to confer additional bonuses such as healing or even spells. A wizard would teach her spells, a cleric would teach her healing, a paladin would teach her to smite, and so on and so forth. For the second point, as the PCs travel and talk with Ireena, have her voice how she has always had these dreams about places and things that are actively relevant to the PC's own interests and personal quests. If you have a barbarian PC, have Ireena tell them of how she dreamt about ruling over a barbarian clan that currently resides in the woods. Have a cleric or a paladin PC? She can tell them about how she once dreamed about being a powerful priestess, which can allow you to open up hooks for the church in Kretsk or even St. Andrew's orphanage in Vallaki. All this is to say use her past lives to build genuine connections and discussions with the party over just being the girl the villain wants to seduce. Players enjoy it when stuff is personalized for them and they get to talk about how cool or interesting their own character is. And this, I believe, is a good way to sort of bring that out and generate interest within Ireena. And then, of course, one of the things that I have to talk about is the concept of using Ireena as a PC rather than an NPC. Now, there is only one instance in which I would ever condone using this, and that is only if your entire party is originating from Barovia. And at that point, I mean if all your PCs are playing the NPCs, such as Ismark, even Izek, maybe even Viktor Valakovich, things like that. The reason why I recommend it only being this way is because that way, every single PC has a tie to Barovia and Strahd's story as a whole. Whereas if you have a bunch of custom original PCs and then one of them is playing Ireena as a PC, you're going to struggle with the idea that Strahd is only interested in that PC and all the other players are going to feel like they're being thrown by the wayside. Strahd is going to genuinely have no interest in them beyond entertainment, whereas with Ireena, he has a truly deep-seated obsession. So with that said, either you have to have them all be based off NPCs from the module, or have none of them. That is my personal recommendation. If it works well for your game, great. I've just heard that a lot of people have had very mixed experiences with it, and I would prefer to not invite that kind of difficulty to my table. The last part I want to cover is less practical advice for DMs or players, and more just a way to sort of tighten the story within Curse of Strahd and make it more impactful regarding Ireena's presence. There are 2 NPCs frequently mentioned within Curse of Strahd's pages, that being Patrina Velkovna, a ghost related to the Dusk Elf quest within the module, and Saint Markovia, a cleric to Lathander who resisted Strahd in some fashion, either by speaking out against him in Barovia or confronting him directly within the many raids against Castle Ravenloft. I made it so that these 2 NPCs are actually further incarnations of Tatyana from the past. Patrina's presence and actions relate directly to Strahd slaying all the female Dusk Elves and cursing them to be unable to repopulate, resulting in them slowly dying out. And then there's Markovia, who, being an incarnation of Tatyana who decided to up and try and kill Strahd, makes for some excellent drama. This can also put the PCs on the path to finding the magic item of Saint Markovia's Thighbone, which is instrumental in being able to actually fight Strahd towards the end of the module. And perhaps have Ireena endure some flashbacks of her battle with Strahd when they all attend his fateful dinner. This also gives an additional explanation as to why St. Markovia is entombed within Ravenloft itself, as a sort of way for Strahd to pseudo-mourn her. Now, when it comes to running Ireena in combat, as I've said before, you can have her own stat block, or rather have her presence just grant benefits to the party. There is an additional way that I like to add that adds more customization to her abilities and also engages the players a little bit more strongly. And the way that I accomplish that is through something that I call the party action. Rather than having their own individual stat blocks that you need to keep track of, an NPC or several NPCs each instead grant the party a single action that they can use once per round of combat. Think of it akin to a legendary action, but for the party, and they can only use it once per round. For a cleric NPC, it would be healing. For a druid NPC, maybe they can choose an area and make it difficult terrain. For a wizard NPC, maybe choose a target and hit it with magic missile or grant another party member use of the spell shield. I've included a combination of Ireena's full stat block as well as the party action system within the links below, outfitting her with different actions based on the classes of your party. This can help Ireena become sort of more customizable and gain the benefits of multiple classes instead of just one, without it being too overpowered or taking some of the shine away from the other players. In terms of magic items, here are some that I feel tie really well with Ireena's backstory and her previous incarnations, and those can be used as talismans to maybe awaken past memories or open up plot hooks. These could also just be genuinely cool to outfit her with over the course of the game. And finally, for our homebrew magic item this evening, we have Kolyan's Blade, an ancestral sword passed down through his family that the PCs can gain as a reward for helping clear all the quests within the village of Barovia. Kolyan's Blade is a +1 longsword that does not require attunement, dealing an extra 1d4 slashing damage on a successful hit. Additionally, once per short rest, the wielder can opt to forego the additional 1d4 damage in exchange for adding a 1d4 bonus to any roll that they're making. It could be a 1d20 roll, damage roll, healing roll, whatever have you. And when this is done, the 1d4 bonus is gone until the next time you take a short rest. I wanted to make a genuinely simple item that if the PCs find to be too boring, they can kind of just give to Ireena to use in combat. And it can serve as a reward that the players are given from Ismark after they help him restore peace to his village, or as a weapon to use when he asks them to take her to Vallaki for safety. You could also maybe have a touching roleplay moment between Ireena and Ismark where he gives her their father's sword, as a way of showing that he trusts her and is ready to forego the overprotectiveness, in the hopes that she can overcome Strahd and the other problems that she is facing. And with that, that's our coverage of Ireena Kolyana / Tatyana Fedorovna, everybody. I want to thank all of you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and press the little bell icon to be notified of future videos. And also, DMs, let me know how Ireena has worked out in your games, if your players have enjoyed her, or if they kind of just left her by the wayside, if Strahd ended up getting her in his clutches. And also let me know what other stuff you guys would like to see in upcoming videos. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.